Right, we're going to do a couple of different types of lids. Been asked for lots of lids, so I'm going to do two really simple lids to begin with, and they're two lids that have been thrown off the hump. When you're doing lids, you want to plan ahead what lid it is that you're wanting to achieve. There's a vast array of lids. At home, have a look at pieces you've got at home or when you're out, and look at a piece. Look to see whether the lid has a flange, whether it's just a plain lid that sits into a gallery, whether it's basically a small cylinder, a bit like a lid for a ginger jar. There are so many different types of lids, so you really need to plan that before you actually make your piece. Have a look at the profile of the lid. We all think we know how lids work. They're ubiquitous, we use them all the time, but it's not until you actually look at a lid that you realise that there are so many different types. So I'm going to do two really simple little lids that can be thrown off the hump. So that's using a large piece of clay, but I'm only going to use a small section at the top. I think I've done one of these before, but I'm going to repeat that as a recap, but show you how you can do very similar kind of method, but you get two quite different lids. So throwing off the hump, you don't need to centre the whole piece of clay. You're only going to take up, say, a small section, a bit like the size of a doorknob or a little satsuma or something. So again, wheel going as fast as possible, plenty of water on the top, and I'm only going to centre, cone up and centre the top part of this clay. As I do it, I'm going to do, it's good for when you're doing repeating lots of little pieces, so you might want to throw quite a few lids before you actually get the one that fits properly. I'm going to just take up a little bit of clay at a time, and as I make more lids, I'll be working down the clay, so I'll be centering the whole piece up, but don't bother with doing the whole thing to begin with. Just center up, cone up and center down a small section. So I'm going to be using that bit. Center down like you normally would do. So I'm going to cone it up once more, just to take off the section of clay that I want. And I only really want about this much clay. And that's going to give me a decent sized lid. So using my fingers, I'm just going to press in underneath, and it's just kind of taking off that section of clay there. So this is the only bit I'm going to work at. It's as if this is the wheel head that you're normally working on. It can be a little bit tricky because it's quite small, so it's okay if you've got little hands like me. I'm going to centre down on this piece of clay. And then this little piece of clay is nicely centred on the wheel head. I'm going to do the one first of all where it's got a built-in knob. So I'm going to create the knob by, instead of pressing down in the middle like you normally do to push in and then pull out to make the inside of your pot, I'm going to press down slightly at the side. So pressing down at the side here. Should have plenty of water on there so it doesn't stick. Pressing down to expose some of that clay in the middle. And this is the bit that I'm going to raise up to use as my knob. Slowing the wheel down a little bit. Pressing in at the bottom, and then you can just begin to shape however you want it to be. It could be something quite flat, so you can get your fingers underneath it, but you can make it a little bit more decorative if you want to. So taking it up into a little point. This is all kind of aesthetic more than anything else, but use this time before you've actually done your lid to get a basic shape of the knob that you want, because it gets a little bit trickier when you've actually pulled out your lid, as it can go a little bit off centre and begin to rock around a little bit. So now I've got the knob of my piece done, I'm going to draw out from the side. So this piece of clay underneath here is what I'm going to draw out from the side with, and I'm going to draw it out and up, a bit like a little bowl shape. So looking to the right hand side, I'm going to be pinching from underneath and drawing this piece of clay out the way. Pinch gently and draw up and out, a bit like when you're doing a bowl, because this is just basically a very little bowl form. Adding a bit of water. And you want to remember to take away the water that's on the inside here, as if you leave it in there, it's going to go really soggy as this gets a bit thinner, and your little lid will just begin to flop and collapse. So tidy up the shape of your piece. It's a really little lid that I'm doing. So normally I would have, say, another pot on the side, and I'd be using calipers to measure. So you'd be measuring from the gallery, from the outside of the gallery of the pot, so that this actually fits in. And this is meant just to sit inside the gallery of a pot. So I'm just going to refine this a little bit more. Slow my wheel down. Dragging that out slightly. Then tidy up the edge with a little bit of chamois. And take away any excess water that's in there. If you want to have it a little shallower, you can very gently press from the inside, supporting from on the underside, to flatten it out slightly. But you don't want to push it too far and have it collapse. Underneath here, you want to do a cut with a wooden tool or some such. Pressing in to try and cut in as far as you can. Be quite gentle at this point, because what can happen if you're pressing in too hard, too fast, it makes the piece begin to undulate and you end up with a really wobbly kind of lid. Get a little bit of water under there, and to get your tool right in. And often I'd have a piece of cotton to wrap around and pull it. I don't have any cotton today. If you haven't got any cotton, then you can do, either you can stop your wheel and you can just cut through with a wire like you normally would, or if you're very careful, you can kind of pinch with your fingers, pinching in until you pinch the lid off the wheel, and then it just comes off at the top. And this little bit you can turn off afterwards. You can turn your, gently, and turn your knob upside down in your gallery and turn that little bit off. You want to just put that aside to rest for a little while. So that's an all-in-one, let's call it drop-in lid, and it's got the knob already done. I'm going to show you another lid. It's kind of shaped that way, so you're going to be throwing it upside down, so it's as if it sits on a pot like that. So it's very similar to this one. You want to cone up and centre down a little piece of clay at the top again, And as always, you're doing that quite fast. And again, you're just going to be taking off a small amount of clay that you want to use. Centering that little knob of clay you've got on the top. This time I'm going to take out the lid as if I was doing a bowl. So pressing in the middle with my finger and slow the wheel down, begin to draw out the way. Adding a little bit of water, consolidate on the rim, and then from here I'm going to begin to draw out my lid again. This is one with a flange on it. Consolidating in here so it's not too thin. Drawing out. Then this little flange on the inside. Begin to pull up a little bit. Straighten that up. And this is the piece that will sit inside your pot, and this is the little lip on the outside. And when it is so small, it is quite fiddly at this point, but you want your flange to be going kind of vertical, really. So I'm just tidying up with a sponge. And to just consolidate on the rim, soften it off so it's not too hard. And again, I'm going to cut away at the bottom. The inside of the top of my pot is about here. I'm going to take it down to about here so that I've got enough clay on the underside of this to turn a little knob onto it. You could do it just at the very bottom where the inside of your lid is, but it would mean that you would have to attach a small knob of clay afterwards. But if you cut down a little bit further, you can use the clay that you've actually got left there. Kind of doing it at an angle, again trying to take it in really slowly. Taking all this clay in, and then I'm going to do a pinch again like I did with the other one. So pinching right from the very bottom. And then just pinching off. So this is going to be a lid that's then turned that way and sits on. I would tidy this up when it's gone leather hard. I'll then tidy this area and use this bit of clay at the top as a knob. So it's a little lid that sits that will sit in the inside lip of a jar. I'm going to dry it that way up. So that's how to do 2 little lids off the hump. Next time I'm going to do how to do larger, more traditional type of lids. These are just very small lids. You won't be able to do very large lids off the hub, just for little ones. Okay, thank you.